Okay, so the Romans are 300 years before the Common Era. The Rome is already several hundred years old by the time they destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Some say as much as 700 years old. In our tradition, it says that when the first Beis HaMikdash was dedicated on the very first night, and Shlomo HaMelech, who's the anti-Nebuchadnezzar, right, collected the whole world instead of made gullus for the whole world. He married the daughter of Paro Necho. That was a big mistake. What was he trying to accomplish? To conquer all evil and bring it to good. So he married princesses from around the world to bring them to Yerushalayim, that everybody should have a connection to the Beis HaMikdash Yerushalayim, to the truth of Torah mitzvos and the Shras HaShechina. Yeah, they weren't ready. And they did secret avodah zarah and so on. On that very night, it says, Romulus, angel came from Shemayim, struck a reed into the Mediterranean, and started to build landfill that eventually became the city of Rome. Or that Remus and Romulus, the legendary founders of Rome, built their first hut. When? The first day of the Beis HaMikdash, which was a flawed Beis HaMikdash, which would eventually be destroyed by the Babylonians and then redestroyed by the Romans. And you have to understand something very, very important. The second Beis HaMikdash is an extension of the first Beis HaMikdash, not a beat. And the Beis HaMikdash that's going to come is a recreation of the first Beis HaMikdash. But the second one was just kind of like an extension. Okay, we'll speak about that. But says the Ramban, in the year that Constantine, the emperor of Rome, converted to Christianity in the year 312, remarkably close to the beginning of the 1,000-year Galus period. Remember 240 to 1240, that's the 5th millennium, a millennium of deep Galus. That's the 1,000 years of Christian exile. Get it? So even though Rome was a pagan nation when they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they quickly became a Christian nation in the year 312. And says the Ramban, the Christians are Edom. They are affiliated to Esav Amalek. That's one of the key points of the Sefer Geula. So anytime you have a Christian country that persecutes the Jews, that's an articulation of the Galus Rome. And it reached a peak, of course, in his day, where they were trying to separate Jews from Torah mitzvos. So anytime a Christian nation declared prohibition against serving openly as a Jew, that's part of that Galus. That's what the Ramban says. That's number one. So now you understand, the Christian world is Rome. Now, where does the Muslims come in here? Yeah. Okay. So under the two legs are 10 toes. 10 toes are galvanized ceramics. You know what galvanized means? You mix it with steel, and you get something much harder. The 10 toes represent the final stage of the Roman Galus, in which it's mixed iron and ceramics. Now, ceramics very strong. Can you break pottery? I'm sure you have kids that have broken a lot of pottery over the days, right? Like, do you watch your china closet, like all the nice dishes you brought from America, like it one at a time, smash, 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 right? And you better repair the shelves because they'll all fall down. You know, all that kind of stuff. So it's easy to smash pottery. That's Ishmael. They're not warriors. They're not warriors.
Ishmael.
They're not warriors. They know nothing about making weapons and technology and warheads.
They go to the Christians. That's number one.
They get Yishmael realizing that he's cut out of the legacy of Klal Yisrael by Yaacov Avinu, marries the daughter of Yishmael, at which point Yishmael drops dead, because Yishmael has his own direct connection to Hashem. Yishmael is the only nation that has Hashem's name in it. They pray more than we pray. They advocate tznius more than we advocate tznius, in many ways, for a good reason, because they're just that corrupted. I mean, if they didn't, you couldn't imagine what would happen, because they're shtufei zima. They're identified as being the worst behemoths that there is, the worst balei taiva. So if they don't protect, if they don't put black on women, they're gone. They're going to be gone. Yeah. Okay. So either voluntarily or involuntarily, they're going to be gone. So that's who they are. So they're Cheres. And Esav marries the daughter of Yishmael and says, through Yishmael, I hold on to the birthright of Avram Avinu. Wow. Because Avram said to Hashem, Lu Yishmael yichlef anecha. What do I need Yitzchak for? I got Yishmael. And Avram, like I said, no good deed goes unpunished because of Avram's great love for Yishmael, which was never ending. They were given the opportunity to hold Eretz Yisrael for at least 1,000 years. Some say 1,300 years because that's the age that Yishmael went to get a bris milah. 1,300 years.
What's Eretz Yisrael?
Does the Rambam say that?
Rambam does say because he was only 1270. He's 1263. But there has been calculations made that from the time, the Christians originally, they convert to Christianity 312, they become the Byzantine Empire, they separate Rome from Constantinople, and that second branch, Constantinople, which is today Istanbul, which is why Turkey also is an important player. Hello, Turkey. These countries that are nothing with nothing, all of a sudden become the big shots of the world because we're all coming in for that last bow right now. So Istanbul controls Eretz Yisrael, and then come the Muslims and take it away. The Muslims take it away from the Christians, and that starts from the 6th century, right? Like the year, I think it's 572. By the way, some make the calculation that the 1,000 years ended in 1948, or that the 1,300 years ended in 1967, by looking at the historical clock from the time there was a Muslim conquest.
One second. So what year was the Muslim conquest?
So back up 1,300 years from 1967, and what do you get?
6,
The year 517. Yeah, but take the year 517 and add to it 1,300 years.
517. 1817.
No, it was
1300 plus 517 or 1,000?
no, it's not 517.
Let me ask something. Shabtai Tzvi, that's the Turk.
That's later. Yeah, but that was with the Sultan. That was the
Can you go back to that? Yeah. That's very interesting you said that, the 1967,
Yeah, can you just tell us the year?
The Sultan that conquered Eretz Yisrael from the Byzantines. Remember, the Byzantines are Christians who are the succession of the Romans.
You mean they stayed behind?
The Romans controlled Eretz Yisrael, but that period was known as the Byzantine Empire.
And the Byzantines were Romans that came to live in Eretz Yisrael.
They were Christians. Remember, from now on, we don't care the ethnicity. The ethnicity is not important. What is important is the religion. The fact that Rome is Christianity.
Right.
That's the chiddush of the Ramban.
It doesn't matter what, you're a Jew. It doesn't matter what country.
Christian persecution is Rome. Period, end of story.
Okay.
Now, in Eretz Yisrael proper, the control of Eretz Yisrael was limited.
Well, 1 second. Sultan conquered Bnei Israel, conquered Eretz Yisrael from the Byzantine in which year?
I want to give the camera the accurate quote, but it was 1,300 years before 1948. Okay, so some want to trace that. I've seen. I'll owe you the exact timeline. Yeah, and that's when they built the Dome of the Rock in the mid 7th century. They built the Dome of the Rock.
The 648.
It was Emperor Suleiman, the magnificent Omar. That's what we call the Mosque of Omar. These were the guys that conquered, and I'm sorry I wasn't going to speak about that today, but now that you mentioned it, they've spent their coupons. They've run out of Tlushim. Okay? So that's why the Romans, meaning the Christian world, reconquers Eretz Yisrael in 1948, General Allenby, because Esav is known as Chazir Miya'ar. He's the pig. He represents himself as kosher, but internally they're rotten to the core. But it also means Machazir. He will be the one to return Eretz Yisrael to us. It had to be taken away from Yishmael, which due to Avram's prayers was honored with a minimum of 1,000 years, some say 1,300 years of ownership of Eretz Yisrael, but ownership that would only be Eretz Yisrael bichurbanah, an Eretz Yisrael that showed nothing in terms of industry, development, civilization, when, until the British came in 1948, this was no place to live. No place to live.
They were here before the British.
Yeah, they were here before.
No, the British were here in 1918, excuse me.
1918.
1918. But what I'm saying is that from the period of 1918 to 1948, in those 30 years that the British were here, they turned the country into a country that was normal, that was civilized.
But before that, it was a nothing.
The Ottomans. They didn't pay attention. It was Hefker, poor, broken, abandoned, neglected. Go on. There was swamps all over the place. The city of Chadera, where I learned in yeshiva, they had to plant eucalyptus trees because that soaked up the swamps and the mosquitoes that was killing everybody from malaria. This was not a habitable country. Why? Because Am Yisrael are the true partners to this land. And the land would not respond to anyone else. The land was loyal. This you have to go to more detail, but Eretz Yisrael is unlike any other land. And many of the contemporary thinkers wrote about this, or Cook wrote about this, that it has like the next level up of reality. It's not just an inanimate object, it's something that's borderline, has its own neshama and its own animation. And therefore, it's not like a regular piece of land. It actually has like a loving relationship with Am Yisrael, and there's an indigenous thing. There's chemistry.
It doesn't make logical sense that nobody else in those hundreds of years didn't build it up. It's amazing,
Right.
Incredible.
And Rav Kook writes extensively about what happens to Jewish people once they start coming to the land. And he was the only one that had patience to look at the secular Zionists and say about them that they were doing something that was worthwhile and positive and not destructive. Because there was a lot of destruction. It was terrible destruction in a spiritual sense. And it's ongoing. It never stopped. It never fully stopped. It's still going on. It's still going on. But, it's still going on, but now there's 1 million Haredim here. It's still going on, but now, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of Chosrei B'Tshuva. It wasn't what it was when it was being built in 1906 or 1905.
So you're saying that the non-Jewish people did try to build it up, but it just failed.
They never even bothered.
I thought they didn't bother.
They didn't bother. What was that important?
Yeah,
It was never important. Jerusalem was important to a certain extent because of the religious significance. There was a big fight between the Muslims and the Crusaders throughout the years. The Crusades were failed attempts to reclaim Eretz Yisrael from Yishmael. They really tried hard. There were 5 crusades. The one that was most successful was the first one. They came in 1099, which is around the time of Rashi. And they conquered Yerushalayim, and they killed all the Jews that were there. Every single one. They put them in one shul and burnt them alive. And they slaughtered. And they made it. It was a crusader town for a number of years. But then eventually the Arabs came back and took it back. It had no traction. They kept again and again and again. Godfrey of Bouillon, Richard the Lionhearted, all these people. And all along the way they murdered Jews. They killed every Jew. Remember, the Ramban was alive after the First Crusade. Think about it. And you see how the Crusades and Christianity were so much more destructive than the Ishmaelim. Not that the Ishmaelim were any picnic. Many of them, just like they have ISIS today, they had the Almohadis then. There's always a portion of the Islamic world that is radical and wants to kill and do jihad. And then there was traditionally a portion that were smart and didn't want to get killed, and didn't, because they realized they wanted to have a nice lifestyle and wanted to make money. Those are the two modalities of Yishmael. You want to make money, have a nice life, don't make the Jews a big deal, but keep them low, but make use of their services. The other option is to kill them. And they go back and forth between those two poles. And it's always been that way. Since the year 622 when they started. Okay? All right, now, that's a couple of points we must finish. So, Edom is Rome. Important is Christianity. Anything Christian is the Fourth Empire. Okay, the second thing is the ridiculous attempts to prove that the rabbis of the Talmud supports Yeshu. One of them was a medrash, was a Gemara that said Mashiach was born the day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So they wanted to say, oh, you see, there was a Mashiach at the time of the Churban. And this is what the Ramban said. Very interesting. He said, there was a person called Yeshu, but according to Jewish tradition, he lived a couple hundred years before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. This is the Ramban. The Ramban says, if you want to talk about some person named Yeshu who was this reformist Jew who was a failed student of Rabbi Yeshua ben Parachia, who's mentioned in the first parak of Pirkei Avos, what does he say? What does Yeshua Parachia omer? Asei lecha rav, knei lecha chaver, right?
Oh. He's a
Wait a
Talmud
second.
of his?
Yeah, Yashka was his biggest Talmud.
That was one of his Talmidim,
Why
yeah.
is it-
And we have Gemaras in Sanhedrin that speak about
It
that.
was a nickname that we gave because we didn't want to call him.
Yeah, it's Yimach Shemo
No,
v'zichro.
but that's Yeshu.
Oh, you say he was
Yimach Shemo
male.
You
v'zichro.
should like I'm saying his real
No,
name
but
is
here's what the Ramban said. The Ramban says, here's our tradition. It was based on the Gemaras in Sanhedrin. Yeshu was a student of Shimon Parach. Shimon Parach is a couple hundred years before the Geula, before the Churban, because he was a Tana, and that was in the era after Hillel and Shammai, and Hillel was alive in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, right? Actually, before. So he was before Hillel and Shammai because he was in.
No,
He was earlier. He was earlier than Hillel and Shammai. This says in Pirkei Avos, first parak of Pirkei Avos, and then came Hillel and Shammai. So he's early. He says, if you want to talk about any Yeshu at all, it was then, not the guy that was running around with Pontius Pilate or whoever, the guy that got crucified. He wasn't the Jewish Yeshu. He may have been something else, but we spoke about such a person.
You're saying there's two different ones?
There's two different Yashka.
The Ramban says that there's such a thing in our literature, in our Mar Sanhedrin, about a guy who was put to death by the Sanhedrin, a reconvened Sanhedrin, because he was an apostate.
That's the second one? Or the
That's the Jewish one, which lived 200 or 300 years before. Your historical Yeshu was either a myth based on the previous one, if he existed at all, and if he did exist, he has nothing. There's no Jewish source that speaks about it. He was a nothing. He was nobody. He was a nobody.
If he wasn't anyone,
but
he
he
would have
did-
been in
who was the
Pirkei Avos.
No, he was in Russia. Why would you put? Who was the one who Balazar said, "How did you know Shem Hashem?" That's when they say he walked the world. This he went on Yom Kippur when they would say,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he
Yeah, but that Yeshu, says the Ramban, is not the Yeshu of the Christians.
I thought that was. 'Cause they always say he walked.
That's
the
why.
temple.
That's why we're here today, to dispel certain myths that the Ramban said in the debate. You got it all wrong. The Yeshu that you're quoting me in the Talmud has nothing to do with your Yeshu. It has to do with a person who lived in the time of Shimon ben Parachia, and that's the guy that stole the Shem Hafarash and did certain miracles. That's not your guy.
I thought that was their guy.
Wrong. That's what the Ramban taught. Next. The last point I want to make here is a very, very famous, in the psukim of the Torah itself. One of the famous quotes that the Goyim, until today, the Christians today quote is, L'yoser shevet me Yehuda, u'mechokek m'bein raglav, ad ki yavo Shiloh. Shiloh. You know, they name cities in America. Shiloh. Right? Ad ki yavo Shiloh. Shiloh. What is that? He says that the ruler staff of Yehuda, right? Shevet, the staff of rulership, will never be taken away from Yehuda. And mechokek min raglav, and mechokek is like the legal power. Mechokek is to make the chakika, make writing of laws. Miben raglav, raglav means he's the one who establishes the law. Ad ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh comes. They want to say, Shiloh is Mashiach, is Yoshka. See? Because the Jewish people had a kingdom until Yoshka came. That was their big thing. You understand? Say, oh, you see, it says in your Torah that you're going to lose your kingdom then. So the Ramban obviously says, first of all, that's not what it means. It's a ridiculous interpretation. But then he also points out that Jewish leadership continued for many, many hundreds of years through the Nasi of the Sanhedrin and so on. And till today, you have Jews that know that they come from the house of King David HaMelech, right? So there were Jewish rulers. There was the Reish Galusa, the head of the exile, hundreds of years after Yeshu. So you can't say, what do you mean? So he said, what do you mean? We lost our authority? We haven't lost our authority. We've had the Davidic line. The king, the Malchus Yehuda, has continued. And by the way, you'll see that some of the real great leaders always trace themselves back to Melech David, the greatest of the rabbis. Like we're going to learn about the Maharal, traced himself to David HaMelech, right? Rashi, David HaMelech. So to say that the influence of Malchus David diminished altogether, didn't diminish altogether. That was one of the arguments of the Ramban. This is ridiculous. But the biggest argument, and with this we'll stop, is he said, we have many, many Maimer Chazal. What's going to be in the era of Mashiach? It's going to be an era of peace. It's going to be a ruler that will rule the entire world. It'll bring bounty and wealth and goodness and wisdom. He says, what did your guy do? He couldn't even prevent himself from getting killed. Some ruler. He's a ruler? How did he rule? What did he rule? He ruled nothing. Did he bring anything good to the world? Besides crusades? Eventually? Nothing. And that was the argument, one of the most powerful arguments that the Ramban used, and they couldn't respond to that. That the Messianic era that's described so beautifully in all of the Nevi'im, and everybody knows it, has nothing to do with this guy. He did nothing. Okay, so that's the point. So let's just summarize and stop. What have we learned? We have learned that the Ramban fought wars of Hashem. He wrote a book called Sefer Geula. He wrote down the vikuach, the debate. We have the text. It's in every classic. It's fascinating reading. I'm sorry we couldn't do more inside. And he justifies the fact that the Jewish people speculate about Mashiach because once we cross the barrier of 1240, right, it is the Messianic era because it's the 6th millennium, right? The year 5000 to 6000, which is the era of Mashiach. Now, it takes time to unfold based on us. If we all did tshuva, maybe it would have happened already. If we told you tomorrow, it's going to happen already. If not, it goes on its own clock. And that clock keeps going until the millennium will play itself out. And of course, we're so far into it that we've seen so many simanim geula. So why did the Ramban write all this? He wrote it to strengthen the faith of the Jewish people at the time. They shouldn't lose heart due to their persecutions, and they shouldn't lose their faith in the inevitable truth that Mashiach is coming. Which is why in our generation, many people, including Chafetz Chaim and others, indulge in what we call messianic speculation, which the Gemara clearly condemns. And the justification for doing that is people need chizuk now. It's not that we're worried that things are going to happen and people are going to lose their faith. We need to be mechazik. And really that's the purpose of these shiurim that I'm giving, really. What I want to just do is awaken that sense of, wow, this is really happening. Things are transforming around us. We see Simanei Geula. Even the Chafetz Chaim wrote that all the Simanei Geula happened. And therefore, by learning our history and learning how this process unfolds, you see the miracle of it, like a flower unfolding, one step at a time. The first stage, the Ramban, and Mitzvah Shem will go on to the next stage, which is around the Gerush Sfarad and the arrival of great figures like the Ovadia of Bartanura, who was a Spanish rabbi that, like Ramban, makes it to Yerushalayim and causes Yerushalayim to further develop. And you have other key figures like the Maharal, and then, of course, the explosion of Torah in Tzfat in the 16th century, which really shows tremendous help. I'm going to end on this note. Notice, make a cheshbon, do some math with me. 1240 to 1492, how many years? 250. Is that significant? Well, if we're talking about a 1,000-year period, what is 250 years? 1/4. Get it? So the night of the 6th millennium is 12 hours, and the day is 12 hours. The night goes from 1240, right, for 500 years till 1740. The midpoint of the night, Chatzos midnight was 1492. The deepest depths of the Gullus, and yet it's always darkest before the Goin. That's the point that we start moving towards the day.
So what happened in 17?
We'll talk about it.